Hey everybody, Yvonne here with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to talk to y'all about a new kind of polymer clay, well, new to me at least, and that is CosClay. I've been working with polymer clay for quite a while, and while I have a lot of experience with it, I don't particularly feel like I'm that good at it. I'm okay, I enjoy it, it's fun. So I'm not approaching this as like an authoritative, I know everything perspective. This is only my experience, limited as it may be, and I'm just hopeful that it'll be helpful to you guys, because with regular polymer clay, what I've used the most over the years has been Sculpey, like Sculpey 3 or Sculpey Primo, which had been my favorite. Just because, you know, it bakes pretty well and stuff. Like I get good and consistent results with it. Now the only thing I was running into though, and the project that we're going to be covering today as well, are these little crystal budded mushrooms that glow in the dark, which I think is awesome. But something that I run into is like some of the finer details with polymer clay are very prone to breaking off, especially for jewelry and stuff. So on these little mushrooms, these little skirts, I kind of have to be very, very gentle with them, or just like kind of beat them up a bit before putting them up for sale. That way anything that is going to break will have hopefully already broken before they go off to their forever home. Now, that being said, we have some here that you can see remain flexible, and this is the CosClay doll, which gosh, and if you go check out their Instagram, because they feature the artwork of artists who use their, you know, product, and so many people do so much amazing stuff with this. This one here is the what color, fairy light over here. And this has very much this one and the red, which the red doesn't deposit color on my hands and tools nearly so much as like the red Sculpeys that I've used. But these are very, very soft. So it takes fingerprinting quite readily, but it's just kind of something to keep in mind. But they do have another product that is the CosClay Sculpt, because I wanted to experiment with the doll, the Sculpt, and the Deco, which is just a line of some of their different colors. It paints wonderfully too. So, but the CosClay Sculpt has different firmnesses that you can choose from. And the medium firm, I have found, is initially a little stiffer than Sculpey Primo, but softens up pretty nicely and sculpts really well. And that's another example that I wanted to show you guys. Is I was making this little like Nautilus monster for Randy for his D&D minis, and this has been baked, but you can see if I had made this out of polymer clay, in my experience, that would have broken off, like, and yet here we are. So it's also, CosClay is ounce by ounce the way I was pricing it, based on I had, like, I guess the price last I had paid at Hobby Lobby. I think it's actually cheaper to use CosClay than it is to use Sculpey. Now, before we get into the meat of the project, I did want to show you guys something that, because initially I thought I would just be using CosClay exclusively moving forward, because of the durability, because of how affordable it is. But there are some things that I consider cons about it that I will be still using Sculpey Primo to do. Because here you can see, this is something like this. Oftentimes I'll have painted it or used the colored metallic clays and like different Pearl-X pigments and stuff. Some of y'all might remember this leaf in the center motif here on this piece from previous tutorials. But this one I sculpted entirely from CosClay, and I was just going to electroform it, which is doing a copper plating on it. But since that's super durable, since it remains flexible, I don't know how I feel about using it as a core in its entirety for electroforming purposes, just because I don't want a thin copper plating over an otherwise flexible core. And then also, while it is very nice to be able to pop the cab out and then pop it back in, if I were to do a piece like this, I would really want the design to come a little bit more over the front, just to keep it, you know, when somebody's wearing it, you don't want it to get bent and the stone pop out. So in the future, I will probably do the base out of Sculpey, and then start doing the CosClay for the finer details. Kind of like how I did here on this larger piece. I made all the gray back here and attaching the bail, which still has a little bit of flex to it, because I would always rather it flex than break. But just all the little details and stuff I liked making out of the CosClay. And we're going to be doing a lot more sculpting videos moving forward, just because I didn't realize quite how much I had missed working in sculpture and polymer clay and stuff. So, but yeah, so that's kind of something to keep in mind, is that sometimes you don't want flexible. Now we could probably glue this in and it would be fine, but I think what I may do is make an additional backing piece out of just regular Sculpey, and that way hopefully we'll see how they fuse together and see if that kind of fixes that flexibility problem, because I do really like working with it. Okay, so I'm gonna set all my little mushrooms off to the side, and I have some different stages of production here, because it's like 104 degrees today, and I didn't want to have to heat up the oven if I could avoid it. So our first step is going to be making the cap and making the stem, and both of those will end up being baked. So I am going to use CosClay for the cap, and then we can actually do a little bit of an unboxing together. I bought a bulk box of, how do I get this open? Whoop, there it is. Ooh, of these 8-ounce blocks of, and I think we got this on the CosClay website. I couldn't find it on Amazon. Now I do have links to everything down in the video description, and those are affiliate links, so anything that you purchase through them helps support our channel at no additional cost to you. But I am going to be upfront with you guys. It is cheaper to get the CosClay from the CosClay website, though I don't know, you may want to look at the shipping, because we use Amazon Prime, and so it might balance out. I don't know. Do your due diligence, but I could not find the glow stuff on Amazon. And I do want these glowing. So, and they have a blue glow as well as a green glow, you guys, which just blows my mind, because I love that stuff. Like, if it can glow, like, why not? If I can make something glow or spin, like make it like fidget friendly, then I do that at every opportunity. Okay, so here we have, with those two, the green glow and the blue glow. Now, in the past, I've always used the Sculpey glow, and you can use these together. So let's go ahead and get this open. Beep boop. Doo 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 doo. What the heck? Okay, I just used my tissue blade to do a little slice in the plastic, because I also want to test and see, stay tuned for in future tutorials, to see how the CosClay interacts with my storage drawers that are plastic. That they haven't reacted negatively with any of the other brands of polymer clay that I've used, but oops. I really should have cleaned up my work surface. I tried. I know it doesn't look like it, but I did try. Oh, and I already broke my nail. Are you... Okay, that's fine. Give me a sec. Gotta do some nail trimming with some sandpaper and metal wire snips. Okay, So this will be my first time working with the glow. Ooh, it cuts real nice and easy. I'm going to set that, leaving it mostly in its wrapper if we can, just because my house is full of dog hair. And we could pass this through our pasta machine. It's very crumbly initially, but I'm just going to use my hands because I'm trying to have this project use as few tools as possible. Make it nice and beginner friendly. So yeah, you can see, even though it was very crumbly, once it heats up, man, it is sticking together real nice. So again, just to there we go. But yeah, not overly sticky, but it really feels like it will stick to itself. And I do love doing just a nice fold and roll to really get things well incorporated. Okay. So there we have that. I think this is going to be the crystal that I'm going to use. It's just a little guy. But that's okay. Not all pendants need a honking crystal. And so I'm just going to pull off about this is about 20 millimeters in diameter. And I'm going to press the crystal up into the clay. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, for the most part, it just behaves and works exactly like any other polymer clay I've ever used. Now, I am going to, because one of my concerns was, since it's flexible, I didn't want it delaminating and detaching from the crystal, and I don't think we have any problems with that. But I'm just going to use my ball stylus tool to drag it down towards the crystal. Now, we do sell bulk crystal kits on our website. If you guys want to help support the channel and get your hands on the same crafting materials that we use. And I'm going to come through, and honestly, like, I kind of wanted to do some that didn't have the stem, they just had the fringe and the cap, or these are not the scientific terms for this stuff either, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off some more of that. So I only needed about half as much as what I thought I did. And you could use a ballpoint pen that's out of ink, or the tip of a pencil, or the end of a paintbrush, or literally anything. And I'm just very lightly dragging the ball stylus up from the end. So it's starting here and then just pulling. So if you can kind of see, and you can always add deeper details later. So let's go ahead and remove some of that dog hair. And from here we can even, working on our work surface, I'm now going to start, this is just a basic glazed tile from the hardware store. So we've done some growth lines, and now I'm going to start going through in just a little bit more firmly. Because the magic happens in the details, y'all. And you can make it however detailed or minimal as you like. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So I know it probably doesn't look like much, but we're just going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to start doing the same thing from the other end. There we go. And then we do have some, this is carbon black Pearlex powder. I really want to get my hands on some, oh, they're pastel, like pan pastels. That would be really cool. But for now, this is what I'm working with. And I'm just getting a little bit onto the brush and then tap, tap, tap out onto the work surface. And I'm just going to brush this up. You could use a brown, you could use metallic colors, you could use all sorts of stuff. And I'm out of frame. But you can see it's just grabbing those high surfaces. So it's going to show off a little bit of that detail, hopefully, that we've done. Then we're going to do the same thing to the other end. Now, you can skip this step and do just painting, which we'll be doing on these guys over here. But I think it really goes a long way to go ahead and do a little bit of that at this stage. And then if you want, now that we've done some of that highlight, low light stuff, we can take this and we can just add a little bit of a twist to it. And you can make these however realistic as you would like as well, by using like reference images and stuff. And I'm just gonna boop, 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 flatten the tip of that, because that's gonna be, whenever we've baked the stem and the cap, this part and this part are going to be unbaked, and that's where a nice solid connection point will be made. So, and then I've got this little, I was making like, I don't know, miniatures or something, but I just set them up like that. And then I'll set that off to the side. So you can see it uses very little clay. Let's zoom back out. I'm going to set that off to the side. And now we are going to give this one, you know, I'm just going to use more of the glow. Oh, I know I'm going to use the red cap. So here we have some, and I am just going to pinch the ends and start really getting this formed. But you can see this is not depositing color the way that most reds. I mean, I'm still going to get a little bit of tint. I'm still going to feel a little bit of that polymer clay residue on my hands, but not nearly to the extent of what I have in the past, especially the pomegranate with the Sculpey Primo. Very, very heavily pigmented. So we could do a little fantastical, like pointy witch's cap mushroom. We could do one that's just kind of rounded. I personally love the ones that are like the little caps, the little pointy caps. So I think, I don't know, let's see what happens. But something that you're definitely going to want to have is a bead that is not overly precious to you. So I just have these here that are very affordable on Amazon, and a head pin, because this is how we're going to be setting our hardware for turning this into a pendant or, you know, a charm to, like, these would make super cute ceiling fan pools. This one's got a butt, by the way. I was trying to give them butts just because I think that's amazing. I like mushrooms with butts. Yeah, I need to get out more. So yeah, just here, a head pin is a tool or a component that you use in jewelry, and these are some mega, like, inexpensive head pins, because again, I'm not worried about the tips being high quality. I just need it to hold together. And what makes a head pin higher quality is whenever they're more consistent about the stem, like the wire being centered in the head of the head pin. And you can see this one's quite offset, but isn't going to matter because nobody's going to be able to see it. So I'm going to use, and I do have full intention to painting these because you can see doing a little bit of an orange added, and I'm pretty sure that this is backwards from how they're supposed to be in nature, but it's a glow-in-the-dark mushroom with a crystal coming out of its butt. So I'm not super worried about being overly accurate. You do you is the best advice that I can give. But they do take very readily to acrylic paints, the CosClay does. But I do like to use a base color that makes sense with the project that I'm on. That way, if over the years the paint wears off or it gets like chipped or something, it won't be as glaringly obvious because it still has that red core. So we've shaped a nice little ball, and I'm gonna try to get all the little seams and lines out. I'm not so worried about fingerprints right now, as I just want to make sure that it's a nice, smooth, even ball. And then we can just use our work surface and Uncle Smush, Smush, Smush. Just making it kind of come up into a cone ish. And then, and it's very sticky and malleable right now, which is okay. But I am going to pinch along through here. And the nice thing about sculpting that I didn't really realize or know how to articulate until here recently is that it's like, just make it the size that your hands make things. So just using your hand as a tool, because I would try to sculpt things and make them so small or, you know, too big, and it's like, just work with just work with your hands and make it that size. So if your mushroom wants to be bigger, let it be bigger. If it wants to be smaller, make it smaller. Okay, so we have that coming around, and a big reason of why I like to use the CosClay for the cap like this is once it's baked and this stem can wiggle, it won't just crack and break it off the way that I have had some pieces do, especially when you're wearing it as jewelry, like on a long necklace. These things are going to be taking some pretty serious abuse. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to take a 3mm bead, mostly just because that's the biggest I can use that doesn't fall off the head of my head pin. And you'll just slide it on there like that, and you can see, boop, how that works. But yeah, I forget what I was saying, but I don't want it to break when it's being worn as jewelry. And so now I'm going to press this head pin up and try to guide it through, up and through the center of our little cap here. I'm gonna slide that off. And then we can really pull this nice and deep into our cap. And then from here, we can start petting it out. So it could be my ignorance, but so if they do have it out as a product, I really need to, you know, get that figured out. But I would love to see them make firmer deco, like different colors in the firmer stuff, because I would enjoy that. Okay, and so from here we can also go ahead and take an opportunity for shaping. So I just place my finger and thumb and then bring this finger up in between them. And so I guess what I was saying about just use your hands is don't try to make your mushroom be exactly like my mushroom. Just follow kind of the basic gist of it and see what shape and size and everything your hands make it end up being. But I'm just going to push those high points, almost like a morning glory blossom. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to be baking on just a little like tile. So I'm just going to set that right on there. And I'll set that off to the side. And I guess actually I'd set both of these off to the side. Now you could very easily just smush those two together and boom, mushroom pendant. But I want to add some different layers of detail that just make me really happy. So that one will get baked. And if you guys are interested, I mean, I'll still show everything at the end of the tutorial. We'll just be working on a couple of different things at a time. So let's see. I'm going to set that off to the side. Now this one here, I did not use glow clay for the base. This is that, the doll clay, which is very nice and flexible. What is it? Fairy Light, which I thought would make a nice, like, kind of neutral undertone. And this one I added some little, like, stippling. So let's see. We have a nice baked cap. And I'm going to go ahead and use the blue clay just because it's here. Ideally, I would have had the stem be blue clay as well, but, you know, here we are. And for this, I do recommend a pasta machine just for consistency's sake, but you don't need it. So I'm just going to take this and roll it out just a little. And then I have, this is an acrylic roller. You could use a highlighter, you could use all sorts of stuff. But I'm going to just roll this out thin-ish. So that's 1 or 2 millimeters thick. So there's that. And then I'm going to have another section here that I am just going to take and smush. Doo-doo. And I'm just going to use my fingers, the pads of my fingers, to smush and spread this out. And this is why I really like having this part of the cap be baked, is because now I can apply pressure to it and just focus on this spot here without worrying about distorting or disrupting the rest of the design or transferring color from the red into the blue. Okay, and now time for one of my absolute favorite tools, linked down in the video description, a porcupine quill. They have just enough give that I don't mind, like, you can get some really cool results with them, is all I'm going to say. Like, they have a little bit of give to them, so it's not going to scratch my baked clay, but it's going to leave some pretty nice results on my unbaked clay. So I'm just coming through, cutting nice and deep into this blue glow clay. Any little bits that get, you know, pulled off, we can either smush them back into the middle, or I like to keep a ball of the clay that I'm working with off to the side. And now we'll come in right here and divide this even deeper into lobes. And experiment and see. You may not have any porcupine quills and you may not like them even, may not enjoy working with them, but there might be a different tool that gets you the result that you're looking for. Because again, there's no right or wrong way to do these things. Just don't eat it, don't put it in your eyeballs. Like, beyond that, you'll be fine. It's art, you'll figure it out. Okay, so now we've gone that far in, and I'm going to use, oh, where is it at? Normally I would use a razor blade, like for a box knife, but I'm not entirely certain. Well, here's a craft knife, let's use that. What's this? Unbaked clay. Just hiding out. Like I said, I tried to clean my work surface, yet here we are. But yeah, so just take something sharp and thin. Whoops, that took some with it. But you can just come in and add a little bit of depth by just cutting into the parts that are still unmarked. And this is going to give us like a really nice gill structure, I think. Okay. I normally go through and do a third baking for the dots, which that's another thing that I like about the CosClay is so far I can just bake the heck out of it and it hasn't darkened down on me yet the way that, you know, if you get a lot of baking in on some of the more pale polymer clays, they have a tendency to burn. So there we are. So you can kind of see from the edge, it has a little, you know, it's got a nice effect. I like it. I'm going to clean up just with a little bit of scraping those edges. Might even come around through and just do a little bit more where my thumb has pressed it down of just slicing around that edge, trying to keep all of my whatever mark I'm making with whatever tool, I want to make sure that it is in line and makes sense with the other lines. I wouldn't want to come in and do a cut like a crosswise. I want to keep it kind of just right there doing its thing. Now we might need to scrape off some excess, but that's okay. Oops, out of frame, sorry. And I find organic looking work like this to be much easier to get a result that I'm pleased with than when I try to do something that is very clean and you know, maybe more minimalist or something. So there you can see that's how it's looking. Not, you know, perfect right now, but I'm happy. And now we're going to come through and we have our piece that we rolled out from earlier. Which one are we doing? Yeah, we'll do that one. And so from here, I want to place it. I'm going to go ahead and just cut some off and bring it around and then cut it. And from here, I'm going to just kind of pinch this up until it's over the tip of the stem. And I'm going to start with my ball stylus. And I don't mind a bit when it takes away some material. I just kind of goop it back into the ball of clay. So there we are, just turning it just a little. And so already, just with that one tool, we were able to get a lot of detail. I'm not worried about those little scraggly bits just yet. We can use our Porcupine Quill. to start coming through just at the tip and kind of letting it cut things up just a little. Now, not at the tip, but at the edge. And you may actually end up removing whole little chunks of clay, but I think this is going to get us, I think it's going to get me the result that I'm looking for, which is a really varied, interesting little skirt on the mushroom. And now I'm going to, we're going to be losing even more maybe. I'm just going to come up from underneath between the baked and unbaked clay and just kind of pressing up and lifting our material away. Now you could have cornstarched this, you could have put a little bit of water on it just to make a nice rappel. But that's not completely necessary. So now we can take that, sticking out all weird, and smush. So now we have a really nice connection point. It is completely enclosing and encasing where we did the head pin with the bead. And again, I do like to take this little rack that bakes just fine, but I just set my mushrooms in it, and I can do one in each one so long as the crystals and base isn't too big. One going off in kind of each direction, and this is just the little thing that I bake them in. So that way, boop, hopefully they'll be just fine. I've also done it where I stand them kind of two in a thing, but I can't fit as many that way. It really depends just on the piece. So that being said, we can go ahead and have an idea, because I want to use this same blue for the little bits up on the top, little mushroomy bits. So I'm actually going to use this as a base to just hold my mushroom. And we can do, I'm going to show you guys how to do this one, this style. So typically I do that after baking, because these ones I just made little, like rolled little balls and then smushed them on. But I really like this style. So we'll have to get this baked. No, you know, it'll be fine without painting it. So this is, I feel like the Porcupine Quill for me is essential for this step because of the way that it's flexible. So I just come in, let's zoom in real close. I come in with my Porcupine Quill and I just start tearing off with little smushies, a little bit like that, just very irregular. And then we'll come in, and I like to start at the edge and I just smush it on down and then press and slide off, and that gives it a nice connection, and it still stands up, like protrudes out from the mushroom nicely. And so again, I'm going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, depending on the size. And then we'll come in right there, and I just kind of roll the Porcupine Quill. And then you can kind of tap and poke. Certainly pay attention to reference images if you feel kind of lost. I like to tap it with my finger a bit. But then, yeah, just boop, boop, boop. And kind of roll it on. And this is where I don't mind it being sticky, not in the slightest. And then we can, almost took half of that one with me, but it made a good connection point with the baked clay. And then, so we take that, kind of just roll it on, and then boop. Just being very, very random with it. Because I'm much better at being random and being like, just leaving it to chance than I am in being like, I'm going to make it this way, and it is going to be meticulous and perfect. Oh god, broke its little head off. There we go. So yeah, I just let it be what it's gonna be, and then sometimes you can poke it. So yeah, again, just sometimes you don't make any sort of contact at all, and it can be really helpful to just kind of glob on some, like how we have there, and then build up, and that gives you something nice and solid to attach to. So yeah, sometimes getting a little bit of the clay on there can make it just a bit easier for everything to hold together. And this can be time intensive, but again, magic in those details. And then we'll come in for the next layer up. And you could get more dense or less dense or whatever makes you happy. I tend to have my highest density towards the edge and then dwindle a little as we travel up the cap towards the center. But I have no fast rules about it. I just kind of, this looks nice. Have fun with it. But yeah, so just doing that little bit, placing it, positioning, and then removing some, kind of almost really presses it down, I say as it mocks me. Presses it down into position. There we go. That's got a little bit of fur in it. Let's take that. There we are. Poke, poke, poke. And I'm doing this real time with you guys because you never know what might come up, what accidents or happy accidents might happen, or glorious disasters. Just there's no telling. So then we just come on through. Now I'm sure you could use some sort of liquid Sculpey or something to make really nice connections, but I just don't feel like doing anything drippy. And also just placing them and then dabbing a bit with your finger to get it to make contact is nice. You don't get as much protruding out, but it certainly is faster. And just the fact that all of these little dots are going to glow makes me so happy. Okay, there's that. And again, just picking up that little bit. And then if you've smushed it with your finger and you don't really like how it looks, you can just poke it some more. There we go. And so now I'm gonna just pull a crystal out of the clay. And I'm really, really pleased with how this is looking. So we are going to pop this into the oven, and this stuff bakes, the CosClay bakes at the same temperature as Sculpey. So that's really convenient. It says bake for 30 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit, 135 Celsius per 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. So I'm going to bake this, since the cap has already been baked and the stem has already been baked, I'm going to bake it for 30 minutes. I think that'll be just fine. So the next step after baking, and you can see here, now pretend with me for a moment that the stem is made of the same clay as what we've made all of this stuff here. And you can see it's very flexible still. But maybe, just maybe, look at how vibrantly that glows, y'all. Like, that is intense. So that is the CosClay glow, which I guess, yeah, I used the green one. I thought I was using the blue, but here we are. Versus the, this is unbaked Sculpey. And then this right here is baked Sculpey. So you can see how that's glowing. So, I mean, it's not quite a direct comparison just yet because I have not painted this, but it certainly does glow nicely. A little bit more translucent than the Sculpey, which that's interesting. It glows though. That's nice. Okay, so the next step is we are going to take a paintbrush. This is just a nylon bristle flat brush. And the colors that I'm using are Apple Barrel Matte Black and Folk Art Bark Brown. And I just have a little cup of water here. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of pigment. I mean, a tiny bit of pigment. A little bit more water. And I just want to get the pigment completely dissolved into the water so that we can make a nice little wash here. Maybe a little bit more pigment. But I like to build up the color that I'm going to be using, so we may end up doing a couple of washes here. Getting a little bit more of that pigment. And I want there to be enough pigment and enough liquid that when it settles out, all the pigment's nestling into the nooks and crannies of our sculpture. And I'm just using straight water at this point just to distribute. And you can see how it, oh, there's Millie. She's in her kennel right now and it sounds like she just finished her dinner and she likes to tell us so. But you can see how it comes to rest in those details that we had put in. So I've gone through and I'm just using whatever's left in my brush to kind of just wash the whole thing, make it all kind of match. I do think I prefer the Sculpey for the little dots, just because it really gives us a more opaque clay. But I don't know though, I don't know. Every time I think I've made up my mind about it, I'm like, So now I'm just going to take, I've let this dry a little bit. So after letting this dry just a little bit, just because I don't want to be lifting out all of the pigment we had just put in, I'm going to take just a tiny little bit of that matte black and do the same thing. Just blending it up here on my tile. And you could use a finer tipped brush if you want. But since it's not completely dry, it's doing a little bit of like a watercolor spread thing where I touch it where I want the pigment to be its heaviest, and then it kind of wicks itself into these other nooks and crannies. And I'm getting all underneath right there. We can always rinse our brush out to give ourselves just a little bit more control. And I'm going to bring this down, just pulling that pigment down with me to let it come to rest in any little grooves and spots. Putting the lid back on that. And then I'm going to take up just a little bit more, and I'm going to start laying it down a little darker down by the crystal. Now this is just one way of doing this. I mean, there's as many ways of doing this as there are artists to make and pieces to make, and so don't feel like you have to stick to certain color schemes or shapes or materials or anything like that. Like, explore your creativity. So there is. I'm going to use a clean brush that I've blotted to remove some of the pigment from the tips. And then what I do for these to dry is I actually, sorry for the shaky tripod, I actually store these on my tripod. I just come through with these mandrel pliers, and I'm just going to make a little hook, and then I'm going to hang this up here. So if this is where my work surface is, just coming right on up here, I like to hang, boop, my pieces to dry after they've been painted. And then this one here is already dry. So I'm just going to clean up my work surface, get that stuff out of the way. And I like to seal it with Mod Podge hard coat. Now this is a glossy coat. Let me rinse the brush a little better before putting it away. And I'm going to use, not that one, here we go. Here's a nice clean brush, little fluffier, that way it'll hold, you know, a decent amount of the glaze. And you want your paint to be completely dry, that way you're not wicking the pigment up into the glaze. I love those cheeks, man. Okay, so, and I'm doing this pretty liberally, like generously, like do not be stingy. I don't know how many other ways to try to phrase this. I hope you understand what I am saying. And I kind of like to just glaze the cap, but you can glaze everywhere on these if you want. So for right here, I like to place my bristles and then press, and it lets it smush up against what we've sculpted. See, I was not anticipating how translucent the CosClay glow was going to be, which I think might be a really cool trait. It was just unexpected. And so, yep, just Smushing that, making sure none's pulled underneath that edge. But you could glaze the whole piece if you wanted. I prefer to not glaze on crystals just because I just like leaving the crystal blank, I guess, or unglazed. And I don't want any bubbles or brush strokes or overly thick spots that might risk not drying evenly. And you can see, of course, I have brush strokes and bubbles, and fortunately no bristles fell out, but here we are. I'm going to zoom back out so I stay in frame, hopefully. And then normally I would not have coiled this down all the way. I'd have hung it to let it dry first. But we'll go ahead and glaze this whole piece. Eep! That's okay. Getting just a little bit more on there. Glaze the cheeks. There we are. So I guess after all that work we did to be careful, I'm just coming in and glazing it lightly. Because the paint still binds on pretty well regardless. So, clean that booty. There we are. There is our little mushroom. And then I'm going to, and this is why I'll open a drawer and then just put either a coffee stir, or in this case a porcupine quill, or a very thin knitting needle, and then I will insert the other end into the drawer so that it's levered, and it'll just hang there and dry. So now to finish these, let me rinse my brush and find my lid and cap all my jars back up. I don't want my stuff drying out. There we go. Okay, so I would just take this and make, you could do a wrapped loop if you wanted, but I kind of prefer, I'm going to put my fingernail there, bend over just a bit, but keep my fingernail there to provide resistance. And these were, I do believe, 2-inch head pins, but that is where I would attach a bail. So that's how that came out. Thank you guys so much for being here and hanging out. I look forward to seeing y'all in future tutorials. If you enjoy our work and would like to support the creation of more videos and free tutorials, please consider joining us over at the Happy Crafter Club. Links are down in the video description. On our website, backtoearthcreations.com, we have a calendar of events so you can see when we have new shop updates, new tutorials, live streams, things like that. But yeah, just thank you guys so much. I hope that this was helpful to you. If you have any questions or requests for future tutorials, please leave those down in the comment area. And I guess that's it, y'all. Have you tried out CosClay? Like, let me know what you think, because I'm afraid it's too good to be true. So, but man, just being able to do details that are not going to break off, like if I pinched it and pulled and like really tried to remove it, I could, but for just wearing like as jewelry, I think this is going to be a game changer, you guys. I hope, because I really want to get more into sculpting again without the limitations of, you know, having to hobble my creativity or, you know, whatever it is that I feel like doing. But yeah, thank you guys again for hanging out, and until next time, happy crafting. Mwah. Bye.